Hey everybody, I'm Jason Horn. This is Longboxer, where I'll be digging through my long boxes and looking at old comics and stuff and doing reviews. Like right now I'm doing a review series of Batman 400 through 500. But today is a little different. Today I wanted to talk about Mark Chiarello. He's was the art director at DC. He was laid off today, which is just utterly insane, and not just to me, but like the entire comic book industry today on Twitter is just remarkably insane. Even if it was just like, you know, some corporate decision, it just boggles the mind. Like, how are you guys not thanking your lucky stars that you have this dude working for you? But anyway, I don't want to like spend this video like complaining. I just want to kind of celebrate the work that he's done at DC and how it's kind of shaped my view of DC and just superheroes in general, and honestly just comics in general, because a lot of his projects kind of came along at very important times in my life. And he's not someone who's like kind of like a household name, I don't think, at all, but he's kind of like a creator's creator. Like, everyone in the industry knows his work because his work is like interesting stuff. It's not just like normal comics. If you know Wednesday Comics, I mean, I imagine if you're watching this video, you probably are familiar with his main, you know, editorial projects that he had at DC: Wednesday Comics, Batman Black and White, and the Solo series. So those are the kind of like editorial projects. But he also was like oversaw like covers and stuff like that, and a lot of the coloring at DC and different things. But he's also done a lot of like work throughout the years that I didn't even realize was him until, you know, like years later I found out who he was, and was like, oh, I know, that's that book that changed my life. Stuff like that. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of celebrate his work and go through it and show you a lot of work that I bet you didn't even know he did. Like a lot of coloring work and other projects that you might not even know about. But anyway, we'll get into it and you know, celebrate his awesome work. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Batman Houdini that he did the art for, and this is one of the most important books in my life, honestly. And it's not something I think about very often, but I thought about it today. So like I was done with comics, and I've been done with comics, you know, a few times in my life, but this was around. This book came out, I think, in like mid-90s or so, but I was done. I didn't get it till later. I was done with comics around like 96, 97. I went to art school and just didn't have money. I was living on my own for the first time. I was buying gas. I was paying car insurance and rent. I didn't have money for comics. I picked up some stuff here and there, but anyway, so I quit comics then. And then even after art school, I was so tired of drawing that I just didn't even want to think about art or comics or any of that stuff. So, you know, I just didn't pick up anything for a while. And then I heard about, you know, Batman Gaslight had come out, and I think I'd picked it up at some point. But then I heard about this, and for whatever reason, I was always fascinated with Houdini. And I was like, I got to track down this book. This is the very first comic book I ever ordered through a comic book store. Like they, you know, they had to order it through the catalog and everything. But Chiarello's art in here is crazy. It's so good. It's this like fully painted comic. And I was just reading an interview that he did, and I'll actually talk about that interview here in a second. But this was his first like actual comic book. This was his first long form comic. That is crazy. And he was also talking about in that interview that he took a lot of like photo reference, you know, kind of like Alex Ross does, which is another thing that's crazy to me. But I love this book. This book it just showed me like, you know, like, oh, you can do something super interesting. Those Elseworld books were, you know, they got a little crazy here and there, you know, like Pirate Batman or whatever. And I love that stuff. But it just showed me that, you know, the comics didn't have to be this one thing. Like, even if it's Batman, even if it's still kind of superheroes, it could still be very different than what you're used to. It can be super interesting and different. But Chiarello's art, it's just a shame that we haven't got more long-form, you know, sequential art from him, and hopefully, you know, maybe that'll be one of the things that comes out of this. Maybe we will get more. No matter what, this guy Chiarello is amazing. You know, I'm not worried about him. He's gonna land on his feet. Like whatever comic book or publishing house picks him up and does whatever project with him, they're gonna be blessed, because DC just has no idea. I at least the higher ups at DC, or you know, AT&T or whoever owns it, whoever made this decision, I just don't think they understand what they're losing here. But anyway, if you've never checked this book out, you know, find it, pick it up. The art's amazing. Batman Houdini. So that article I was talking about is in this Comic Book Artist magazine. This is issue 3, featuring this freaking amazing cover by Darwin Cook. And most of this issue is dedicated to an interview with Darwin, but also has this great interview with Chiarello. So if you've never read this magazine, this is like, it's a good magazine, but boy, this is the issue to track down. If you're a Darwin Cook fan, this is just a great interview with him. This is probably, I think the year is like 2004 or something maybe. So this is like around the time of New Frontier. But Darwin talks a lot about his, you know, these are pretty in-depth interviews in here. He goes into his entire life story pretty much. It's a great article. I miss Darwin and his work a whole lot. It's crazy. But getting to the Chiarello article, it's a really good article. I read this like back then and remembered some of it, but I just kind of reread some of it now. It's great stuff. At one point he talks about, so he goes to art school, and he was saying like he didn't really have aspirations to be a comic book artist. Like he was saying his one of his main aspiration was to be like pretty much like a freelance illustrator, but he specifically wanted to do like the painted covers of TV Guide, which I thought was hilarious. Which even like during, you know, obviously during when this article was done, he's like, that's not a thing anymore. Well, not that he said that those painted covers of TV Guide was not a thing anymore. That, you know, they use photographs, but even TV Guide, I don't even know if it's a thing anymore. Surely not. But I thought that was really entertaining. And he talks a lot about Archie Goodwin, that he worked for. He was his assistant in the 80s. And it's really good. He has some really good stories about Archie Goodwin. And this is probably I'll show you this later. But this is the first stuff of his that I remember seeing, were these painted cards that he did for the Bram Stoker's Dracula series. They must have been like reprinted in a Wizard or something somewhere. But I'll show you those, because I've got a lot of his stuff that we can go through. But anyway, the article is super interesting. And he talks in here about like meeting Steranko, like how he's just a huge Steranko fan, and I mean he eventually goes on to do some work with Steranko. I'll show you in a little bit. But he also talks about meeting Barry Windsor Smith. That's a good story. Like, so Barry Windsor Smith had created this like intricate signature, and so when Chiarello was a kid, he goes to a convention and he makes a shirt out of this signature, and Barry Windsor Smith says something like, "Hey, I can sue you for that," and just crushed Chiarello. I thought that was super interesting. But there's some good stories in there, and he talks a lot towards the end about Darwin, about getting New Frontier like kind of going and stuff. He talks about like the thing. New Frontier is another book that's just super important to me. Like, he talks about how Darwin looks at superheroes, or how Darwin looked at superheroes when he was getting that book together, about how like these superheroes used to be admirable, like, and he's trying to steer them back to them actually being heroes. And that's what New Frontier is all about. Surely most of you have checked that out. It's amazing. But anyway, great article in this magazine. Pick it up. Amazing cover by Darwin. So Batman Black and White, another thing that was just huge for me, because when this came out, not the series I guess so much, but this trade at the very least, I only have like one issue I think, but when this trade came out, I was kind of done with superheroes. I was totally into comics at the time, but I was definitely into indie comics and not really into superheroes that much. I was probably still occasionally picking up a Batman thing maybe here and there, or some back issues. But this black and white book just changed the game for me. It was like, yeah, I kind of given up on on superhero, like mainstream DC superheroes being like as good as like the indie stuff I was reading, or as interesting or whatever. And there's just a crazy lineup, like Bruce Timm, like there's just the lineup in here, Brian Boland, Neil Gaiman, it's just insane. It doesn't get better than this. These are the best names in comics. Walter Simonson, Brian Stelfreeze, Matt Wagner. It's ludicrous. So I imagine, again, most of you've checked this out. But if you haven't, so this is the first volume. And this collects the issues. Gosh, it's just astounding. I think I remember coloring this. So this was also at a time when I was just getting into coloring, and I scanned some of these pages in and colored them just to have something to. And that was the thing. Back in the day, it was hard to just find some comics to color. If you wanted to get into coloring, trying to find test pages to color, not an easy thing. So I remember. I don't think I did this whole story, but I definitely did some of these pages in here. Yeah, I definitely did that. That was probably just a pinup I had in my coloring portfolio at one point. Man, just the design of the book too is just crazy good. I'm not sure if Chiarello designed the book himself, but maybe, I'm not sure, but good grief. So anyway, this is volume 1. Brian Boland, I mean, crazy. And so volume 2, this one I have the hardcover, just as impressive. Some people are back from volume 1, but I mean there's Paul Dini, Tim Sale, Alex Ross. I mean these were all my favorite people at the time. Jim Lee. Just insane. These are trades that you should have if you don't have them. This is the story. This is a story that I colored all of that was in my portfolio. This Jim Lee. This is before Hush. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I colored, or maybe not all of it, because it's starting from here. I colored these pages. So this is probably the first sequential Jim Lee stuff of Batman that he did. I think this is, I'm not sure what year. I was going to say I think this is before Jim Lee sold all his Wildstorm stuff to DC, but I'm not sure. I don't even know what year that happened. But anyway, this story's awesome. I'm just going to be fawning over how amazing the artists and creators are that he worked with, that Chiarello has worked with at DC over the years. And then, so, as I was saying in that interview earlier, Chiarello talked about how much he loves Steranko. He gets a cover for Batman. This is the 3rd volume, Batman Black and White. Steranko cover. I mean, it's just nuts. Just some of the, man, that story. This Raphael Grandpa, this one. This story is so good. Jeez Louise. The thing is, so with Chiarello, these comics don't just happen. Projects like this. This was the first one, because there's Batman Black and White, Wednesday Comics, and Solo. That stuff doesn't just happen on a whim. That doesn't just come about magically at DC. It takes someone who has these relationships that Chiarello has to get these books together. That's what they're going to be missing now. Or that's one of the things that they'll be missing. It's just crazy to me. But these projects were just crazy. All of these different guys. This, who else could get all these dudes to get this book together like this? I mean, do they think that projects like this just form on their own? It doesn't. It's not gonna happen. So anyway, Batman Black and White. Friggin' get all of it. So going back to some earlier work of his, so Chiarello did I think the coloring on these. I think that's right. Normally I would do a lot more research before I would do one of these videos, but it just happened today, so I was trying to. But anyway, this is what I know he did. So so all these issues came polybagged of this Dracula adaptation from Topps. Yeah. So of course it came with cards because it's Topps. But anyway, the important thing is these paintings that Chiarello did just blew me away. Like, I remember, I think I was either a senior in high school or just starting in art college. I tried to recreate this painting. So I loved his watercolor work on this series. And I didn't even come close. I don't even think I was using like the right medium to even come close to this. But anyway, this is he started out some of his coloring work early on. He colored a lot of Mignola stuff, and he actually did. This is a cover that he did. I think he did the art for this. Like, him and Mignola worked together. I guess maybe Chiarello penciled it and Mignola inked it, or the other way. I'm not sure, but I think Chiarello did draw this. But anyways, like his collaborations with Mignola over the years were interesting. So Chiarello was the first colorist on Hellboy before Dave Stewart came along. And so Chiarello also this is a deep cut right here. So this is Martial Law Takes Manhattan. This is from Epic Comics. Yeah, so Chiarello is the colorist. I don't think he was the only colorist on this, but he did some of the coloring in here. This is a book I've actually not gotten to read yet. I bought a stack of martial law stuff, and I haven't had the time to read it yet. But dadgum, I've always loved the design of that crazy character. But anyway, so like Chiarello's done quite a bit of coloring stuff over the years. This is a pretty obscure one. And so some more coloring work he did was on this JSA miniseries. It's like JSA All-Stars. I think it was kind of like an anthology series. So I think it was written by the same writers, but just had like different stories throughout. But or at least it had different backups or something. But the backups are the important thing. So this is Tim Sale, colored by Chiarello. Just fantastic. This is still on like newsprint paper, so like the best reading experience you're going to get here, guys. I love Tim Sale. Tim Sale's just, it really was interesting to me. Like those Batman books that he did with Jeff Loeb, one of the other comics that kind of got me back into comics. Man, just, oh my gosh, good stuff. Great coloring. I mean, so Chiarello literally wrote the book on coloring, and I'll get to that in a second too, because I've got that as well. So he also colored this Starwin Cook story. So if you don't have these issues, these have probably been collected somewhere, but man, if you don't have these individual issues, track them down, especially if that trade is on like slick paper or something. You should track this down. Just crazy good stuff. And there's also, I have another, this is a super good issue. So this is Legends of the Dark Knight, which was like a Batman anthology series. Story by Mignola, colored by Chiarello. It is, I mean, it's literally like a Hellboy story, but Batman in it. It's kind of like everything you would expect from, as far as the imagery goes. It's kind of everything. I don't know if this was like right before Hellboy or what the deal is. This was like 93, so yeah, around that time. But good gracious. Just top of the game. Yeah, Chiarello. All right. Like I was saying, he literally wrote the book. So this is the DC Comics Guide to Coloring and Lettering, Chiarello. Introduction by Jim Steranko. Chiarello's hero. He got him to do this introduction. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, so this book came along, extremely important time for me. So like before I even started making my own comics, I was coloring comics. I actually started coloring kind of like barely, but was coloring comics in like 1997. Like when I was in art school, we were learning like graphic design stuff. So we had Photoshop in 1997, if you can believe that, some of you kids. But we were figuring out how to like color comics. We thought like, so the thing was, we thought we were creating all like this, the methods we were using, like we didn't know, or at least I didn't know. I didn't know that comic book people were using Photoshop. I thought like surely, I just didn't know, you know, I was 1997. I didn't know much at the time. I thought the comic industry probably had their own software for this stuff, you know? I had no idea that literally Photoshop is what everyone was using. And so Chiarello goes into depth about like how to mix your colors, how to, I mean, just how to use effects, all that stuff, how to deal with lighting, how to do proper lighting. It just changed my world. Like I was learning a lot of coloring stuff from friends and things like that, but this book really helped. This book really helped me get some basics down. Because so much coloring, especially, you know, when Photoshop came along, it's just everything became over-rendered and just too much. And I think he talks a little bit about that too. But man, this is such a good resource book. I'm sure a lot of the Photoshop technical aspects of this are probably dated. Oh, surely dated at this point. Because this is like way before, you know, I'm not sure what version of Photoshop it is, but this is way before Creative Cloud. So this is back when like, yeah, because like looking at this doesn't even barely look like Photoshop. But even if some, you know, the basics are going to still be there. So like a lot of the technical stuff might be a little dated, but the fundamentals are going to be sound no matter what. So this is a great resource. That's another book along with, so this isn't Chiarello, I guess, but this Bizarro trade that they did with like a lot of indie creators, that's another book like the Batman Black and White, where I was like, okay, there's still some, when I was super into indie comics, realizing that there's still a lot of interesting stuff going on in you know, in mainstream comics. But yeah, pick this up. Freaking great. Talks about lettering too. I don't remember the lettering stuff as much, but I don't think that had as much of an impact, but still good stuff to read about. Pick this up. I think it's on Amazon. You can get it. It's, you know, it's available. So now to get to the Darwin Cook stuff, like, I can't imagine that there's another superhero artist, at least not a modern superhero artist, who's has had as much of an impact on me as Darwin did. His art is just revolutionary, just like taking things back to being simplistic and cartoony and, you know, heroic and fun and interesting. It could be dark and stuff too, but especially this book. This book's pretty dark. So this was like the first kind of big book that Darwin did, and Chiarello edited this. Just amazing. So this book like delves heavily into like the psychology of Batman and stuff, which has never been like a super interesting topic in its own, but boy, Darwin makes it interesting. This stuff is it's pretty astounding. So again, you've probably checked this out, but if not, good grief. What are you waiting on? This book is literally just amazing. And I don't think I tracked this down until after I got onto New Frontier or something. So the way I came about it was, I was just at a convention. I think like Wizard World Philadelphia or something. I think that might be right. And I was just kind of tired from walking around. This was like before I made my own comics, but I was like I did have coloring and stuff that I was showing people just to kind of show them my portfolio and stuff. Had no idea like what I was doing, but anyway, I was at this convention in Philly, and I was just kind of tired and trying to find a panel that was interesting enough to go to so I could just sit and rest. And I stumbled upon Darwin Cook talking about New Frontier. So when New Frontier, the first issue, hit the stands, I'm not gonna lie, on a confession, I saw the cover price and I was like, nah, I'll just wait for the trade. But so I had not checked out the book yet, like during when that panel happened. And when that panel was over, I was like, I'm getting this book. I don't care what the price is. His a lot of the other panels, like the DC panels, were pretty ridiculous at that point. They were just like bros making bro jokes. But Darwin was just getting into like process, talking about how he literally the tools that he used and like how he printed blue line and stuff like that sometimes. But just the way he talked about the heroes, I'd never heard anything like it. And especially at that time, this was a very different time in comics where everything was very bro oriented. It's still, that's still happening, but it's like it was a different, things were different. They're getting better, but But anyway, so like Darwin, he takes things to like, this is kind of like what cartooning should be. Like people, there are a lot of like great, interesting, like people like Alex Ross who are like hyper detailed, super intricate paintings. And I love Alex Ross. I got Alex Ross books, tons of them. But to me, it's not like cartooning. It's like, you know, that stuff's good. It's comics. I'm not saying it's not comics. It's great. It's fantastic. But to me, like, this is comics. Like, and I'm not even saying stuff has to be cartoony, but like, but this is the essence of superhero comics, is the stuff that he did in New Frontier. Just, and the coloring from Dave Stewart in here is always super great too. But these books didn't just happen. Chiarello and Darwin were good friends. And most of, you know, all these projects that Chiarello worked on, like, these were all friends of his. You know, it's like stuff like this might not happen now. So it's just crazy to think about. But man, I can't praise this book enough. This took things to the next level for me personally. Just the art and the making things heroic and interesting, and just the coloring and all of this book is kind of like the perfect book for me. So obviously, if you haven't checked this out, what are you waiting on? And Chiarello's solo books that came out, it was just a great series. So kind of like taking some of the most interesting creators in the business and just letting them do whatever they want, essentially. Just let them go crazy in a single issue. Just wonderful stuff. Even like everything about the dressing in this book, the design of it, just freaking fantastic. I would love to know. I think that interview book that I showed you earlier, Solo, had not happened yet. So I would love to read more about like how this came about. So I would say about half of these artists that work on Solo I'd heard of. I had never heard of Richard Corbin, which is embarrassing to say, but I really hadn't. His, you know, more kind of like horror type stuff. I'd never really been into that. Never been my thing, but man, I love Richard Corbin now. His Hellboy stuff I love. I should read more. Tim Sale is one that I've loved for a long time. Shaken 2 is good stuff, but like just letting creators create, that's not a thing that every editor, you know, lets you do, but it seemed like that's what these books were all about, this Solo series at any rate. He also did he did a lot of these or at least did some of this Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale stuff. I think he edited this Dark Victory at the very least. But he also is known for being the person who, he didn't edit this book, but he got the team of Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee together. And that's another one of the stories he talked about in that interview. He talked about how it came about to get Loeb and Lee together. He told this lie to both of them. Like, he told Jeff Loeb that Jim Lee was dying to work with him, and he would just do anything, because all the people at DC were like, don't even try to get Jim Lee to draw this. That's not going to happen. But Chiarello made this union happen, and he told, you know, Jim Lee, like, Jeff Loeb's just dying to write something for you. So like this, and this is another book that was huge for me. Like, I bought Batman for a long time after this book came out. So like, you know, this might not have happened without Chiarello. So another huge feather in his cap. And maybe the thing that, you know, he's known for the most, I don't know, man. I think it might be, is Wednesday Comics. So this project, just like, like a bombshell, at least in the industry. Like, I don't even know what the outside reaction was to Wednesday Comics. I know it was, you know, popular, but I don't know, like, within the comics creating community, this was just insanely huge. And just, I won't even be able to get all this, you know, obviously in the frame here, but like, these are just labors of love. Some of the best creators. I mean, it's like, these are people at the top of their game doing huge comics. Joe Quinones, Dave Bullock, just Mike Allred, Neil Gaiman, no big deal. Oh my gosh, I can't even like get all this in the frame. But anyways, you probably know it. But like, goodness gracious, this lineup, just like Paul Pope. Like, who else? That's the thing. It's like, who do you think is going to be getting Paul Pope to do anything for you, DC? I mean, I'm trying to keep this positive, but like, it's just, I don't know. Crazy. His work is amazing. The relationships alone that this guy has with all these creators is astounding. Brian Stelfreeze, Walt Simonson, I mean, Ben Caldwell. Oh, it's crazy. Obviously, there's the big collected edition that you could get of these, and it actually even contains the stories. So like Chiarello, had to be worried about, maybe the story's not coming in on time to get, to get this thing all together. So I think they had like alternate stories ready to go if one was late. So, and I think those stories are collected in that big edition. So that's one of the advantages of getting the big edition. But man, you gotta try to track these down and these in the original format. It's just such a unique, like a reading experience that's going to take you back to, reading Sunday comics and stuff. But, just an amazing. It's just insane that that there wasn't more of this. Like, I'm sure it was like the effort behind this must have been like crazy for everybody involved, Chiarello and all these creators. But man, it was just so interesting, such a unique time. Like, this probably won't happen again, and especially now, but like, it's just, I can't think of a more unique reading experience that I had than these. But anyway, so Mark Chiarello, his work is just unparalleled, essentially. I called him on Twitter today, I called him a modern master, and he really is. Not just those paintings. So I posted like some paintings that he'd done. I'll show you here, but like, and these are just unbelievably interesting and amazing paintings. But like, these projects that he also was editor on just changed my life, essentially. Like that, getting me back into comics. Like I credit a few comics with doing that, but literally that Batman Houdini and even like Batman Hush a little bit and that Batman Black and White, those were so huge for me. Like I don't know. If I hadn't bought that Batman Black and White, I don't know if I would have started creating comics. I don't know. Like, I might have, but I'm not sure. But like, and also just that coloring book. So these are my comics. Like learning so I'm not like, some big fancy cartoonist. But one of the things that people have complimented over the years is my coloring. And, a lot of the coloring stuff that I picked up was from that Mark Chiarello coloring book or coloring guide. Just had a huge impact on me, and I know I did a lot of other colorists as well. So just wanted to make this video to make sure everyone know like the breadth of his work and how appreciated he is, and wherever he lands, I know he'll kill it. He's amazing. He's like a creator's creator, like I was saying. Like the entire industry is just gonna be like, on the edge of their seat, waiting to see what he does. So, all right. So this is Jason Horn. Normally, I dig through long boxes. That's why this is called Longboxer, and I review Batman comics and whatever else strikes me. But anyway, hope you found this interesting, informative. Hopefully not too not too complainy. But anyways, thanks.